Good day to everyone, to all my distinguished guests, our loyal customers, our family members, friends, colleagues, former colleagues. The moment that we've been all counting down to has finally arrived, the launch of VAL'SIGNARURE private company. I would like to take you behind the scenes of VAL'SIGNARURE. My name is Ms. Bahle Valentine Matonzi-Ndlovu. Born in Alexandra Clinic in 1978, bred between Diepkloof, Soweto and Alexandra Township. I'm the 8th of 9 children from the loins of my father, Ephraim Biakhe Matonzi, Umwelase, Udungamanzi, Ukhwezi, Umadondo, Ushekembuya, Inkonyane yenkosi, Ungobekela izinhle, Nina bewawa odangazela, Ucholo-cholo. That's who I am, a Zulu girl. Academically, I have a certificate in slimming therapy, a certificate in property management, National Diploma in Office Administration, a number of various short courses, a degree in Government Administration and Development, postgraduate diploma in Business Administration, and a master's in Business Administration, which I'm currently studying. I have been in the working world since my school days. I grew up in a house of entrepreneurs. My father owned a chain of stores and food outlets, what we would loosely call fish and chips, egas, across various townships in Soweto. My maternal grandmother ran a home-based confectionery where she would bake fat cakes, very lovely fat cakes, and buns and homemade bread in Alexandra, 16th Avenue. From the age of 6, I knew that when school ends, we go and assist in one of the businesses. To an extent that even though my main home was in Diepkloof, as and when I would go and visit in Alexandra at my maternal side of my family, my aunt, who owned a general dealer, used to get us involved in the running of her business. On Saturday mornings, we wouldn't be playing like most children would generally do. Wake up a little bit late, attend to some chores, and go play with your friends. No, it was different. My siblings and cousins would go with my aunt to run the different departments of her general dealer, since we had the experience running stores, operating cash tills, etc. from my father's businesses. My favorite department that I used to be stationed in was the butchery. I would be very fascinated on how meat got cut into pieces and all those butchery industrial machines, how to operate them, the packaging, the weighing, the automatical pricing of the kilograms. That was very fascinating for a 6 to 7-year-old. This was definitely the stage in my life where hard work was engraved in my characteristics. When I got to high school level, I landed myself my first paying job as a waitress in Girardelli's restaurant in Sandton. I worked there over the weekends from the age of 16, and at the age of 17, I gave my life to the service of full-time ministry as a missionary in some of the African countries and even here in South Africa. On my return from full-time ministry, I went back to continue my studies whilst working in a beauty and wellness spa in Bedfordview as a slimming therapist. I moved to real estate where I worked for 2 different estate companies, and in the one where I started, I was a PA to the principal. That's what they call a director in real estate world, and a receptionist, whilst renting a chair in a nearby salon from my home, doing all types of hair services, a gift that I've always had. I moved to another real estate company where I became an office manager, and the company opened more branches across the nation in other provinces, I then became a branch manager. As I obtained more educational qualifications under my belt, I started looking for office jobs in bigger organizations than where I was, and I changed careers altogether, from property to parastatal industry. I landed myself a job as a committee secretary in the Engineering Council of South Africa in 2007, in the Standards and Procedures Department. From a scale of work of a branch manager managing 8 employees and 2 officers to a secretariat of a department of 2 people, the workload was too light. The hard worker in me was very bored most of the day, and it showed. In less than 3 months, senior management of the organization at the time realized that I was underutilized, as I would always be available to assist in other positions or department when some of the staff members were on leave. For example, when the PA of one of the directors was on leave, they would always ask me to offer my services and my time to assist in that office. They then eventually offered to transfer me to one of the core departments of the organization called the Registrations Department. And of course, I agreed. Now, real work started. I started from the ground as a registration officer, worked my way up to senior duties of a registration officer. I became an assistant manager, registrations department, and eventually acted as a manager registration. And I finally landed a manager registrations department position, which was my greatest achievement in my career at the time. As much as it is at a managerial level, it was the most influential position in the entire organization, just after the CEO's position. Hence the nickname, the engine of EXA, was given to that department. All the other departments fed and supported this specific core business. Without registrations, there was no mandate for EXA. Over and above managing staff in the department, I was also managing around 500 to 600 engineering professionals who worked for EXA on voluntary basis. This confirms my statement that the registration department manager position was just the most powerful, just after the CEO's position. And the department was an envy of many of my peers. As time went by, new leadership came and left, and the organization evolved greatly. As the organization grew and new departments were added to support the new strategies and improvement of services in the engineering profession, the only way to remain relevant was to be very innovative and strategic as a manager. To look for pockets of business within the mandate and the prescripts of being a regulator. This is when the going got tough, and I realized that the corporate world was not for the faint-hearted. Very competitive it was, not only internally, but in the entire built environment fraternity. Several policy changes took place in the last 10 years, which increased political involvement in the space, both internally and externally. The peaceful space I started becoming very toxic. During the transformation period of the council that was perceived to be predominantly white, I was part of the first dispensation of black employees to occupy office work. The few black people we found there occupied only the housekeeping and the logistic positions. I was also one of the key role players who held the bull by its horns as the council took its rightful position in industry. The higher the influence of the EXA grew, the higher its toxicity, with politics, backstepping, both internally and externally. However, I still grew in leaps and bounds in the organization, and I ended up right at the helmet of the executive level, acting as an executive regulatory functions, overseeing 3 core departments and an interim project team. One of the greatest passions just after being a mom is grooming and developing young people. When it comes to people management, I was very intentional to get to know my team members and junior colleagues in the organization from other departments, and even their lives. I wanted to know about their dreams for the future so I could assist where I could, advise and encourage where I could, just to give balance to the high-pressured work environment we operated in core business. We used to create our own fun by celebrating each other's achievements, special days, birthdays. We would also weep together when it was tough, and we felt like giving up both in our professional space or in our personal lives, and supported each other as one of us lost their loved ones. I am mentioning these things that seems very obvious because there are many versions one would describe my leadership out there. And they were not normal, these things, in the organization at the time. We were under very hostile leadership that did not entertain such gestures of Ubuntu at the time. I will mention a few success stories that resulted in intentional people management and care for them, for one of my team members. I will mention a few success stories that resulted in intentional people management and care for my then team members. One was of a highly educated young man who was underutilized in another department. His responsibilities in that department was only to vet documents. However, he held an honors degree in a certain qualification that I will not mention details of to protect the parties. When I found out about him, because I was concerned about asking anyone I met in the coffee stations who they were, in which department they worked, and what were their duties there. You know, those small talks. When I got to know his story and observed his character from a distance, I knew that the next opening in my department, I would hire that gentleman, should he apply, in order for his expertise to be utilized at its maximum capacity and his employment to be more beneficial, not only to the organization, but to be meaningful to him as well. You see, most corporates lose gold and settle for silver if they do not take the time to stop and to know their people. Really know, without considering corridor gossips about people. This young man's contribution to our team made a huge difference, to the extent that the then CEO even got to find out about him, because I blew the trumpet about his contributions outside of his job profile. I never took credit for his work, but I highlighted that I was able to deliver certain tasks with the help of that person, because he did hold the relevant qualifications of those expertise. Even though he was just a registration officer, he was highly skilled and also recognized in the organization. Another success story of being intentional in looking for potential and utilizing the talent in organizations was of a very young lady who was working at a nearby department to mine, whom her colleagues used to ill-treat. They used to make fun of her, load work on her, and they would just spend their time on their own personal interest whilst she did their job. One afternoon passing through, I met her with tears in her eyes, and I asked what was wrong. She explained the inconducive space she was working in, and I found out that again she was well qualified for positions in my department. She became a shining star when she had the opportunity to apply to be a registration officer in my units, a very high performer in the team. Today, she is a deputy director in one of the government departments. Another touching success story was of another young lady that on entry in EXA was a filing clerk. Her job was to pull records and return them back in the archival storerooms of the organization, which were situated at the underground basement parking of the building. You know how cold those spaces can be, especially in the winter. And there, on a daily basis, she had to face hours of work in that cold environment, accumulating bronchitis, coughs, now and again, not to mention the dust from the old papers dating back to the 1970s. I got to know this lady as my department used to file the most archived documents and had the delegated authority also to access information for old members. I then found out that she is actually a holder of a degree and was actually overqualified for most of the junior positions in the organization, like the one she was in at the moment. I again made her known to senior management, and when an opportunity presented itself in my department, I was willing to take the risk on her, to train her patiently on the job. This young lady is my predecessor now in the registration department as an acting manager. There were many more very successful stories. However, even when you can give yourself to groom your team, the intentions of their own hearts are always different. Some would be grateful for the opportunities you created for them, but some wouldn't. However, these beautiful sweet grain stories in corporate or in any other workplace, they do at times turn sour. Those are the ones whom you will be hoping that a bad tree can eventually bear good fruit, but hey, at times you groom snakes in your yard. You will also meet other colleagues in any organization in general, even outside your direct space, that are planted just to refine you, to prune you, and to sharpen you. But it will be for the good or for the bad. It will all depend on the intentions. I have always appreciated all those that groomed me to be the best that I could be. And they know about it, because I am one who is very generous in praise when you have impacted my life and my work in a positive way, as much as I do mention when you are not grooming me with good intentions. I am mentioning this for the young upcoming professionals entering the corporate world, that not all is lovey-dovey. There are beautiful success stories in corporate, but there's also very dreadful and sad stories to tell. There are upsides and very deep, dark downsides in the journey of climbing the corporate ladder. This was just my personal experience, and I am sure hundreds of people can relate to similar experiences in the work environment. How did I know that it was time to move? I remember one of my seniors when she left her executive position without us knowing the cause, but I could figure it out that the environment was no longer conducive for her. I asked her, because we were all going through the same harshness. I asked her this question: how does one know when to hold on and continue being resilient, and when to let go and know that it is God's shift for you and not from men? She just said, when it's time and it is God, you will know. I never understood her statement until it happened to me. It took me 2 years to finally process the nodding of the Holy Spirit that it is time for a different mission and purpose for me. I wrestled with God like Jacob did in the Bible until I hurt my hip. I fell terminally ill. I was hearing him, but I would share with my confidence that it is what I'm hearing, but I was reasoning logically with God and not walking by faith. He would take the basis of my arguments at times and give me an extension of time. But when that extension came, I used to go back on my words and move back into my comfort zone and enjoy the stay. Because everybody who knows me knows that I loved my job. I was doing for that organization, and I still had a lot of ideas and proposals of improvement. It came to a point on the last 3 months in the job where as and when I changed the posture from wrapping up to leave, to let me do one more thing. I would say, God, just one more. God would touch the hip. I would fall back into ill health. Then he knew I would question that. Then he would remind me that it is time. The only thing God never tells us in our journeys of life, especially when he redirects us, is how the redirection is going to unfold for each one of us. We always believe that because we are his children, our shift will be peaceful and holy. But hey, it takes whatever form. My shifting was relatable to my Lord Jesus shifting to glory. I could relate when authorities knew Jesus was accused of saying he was God, which was true, but the people had to exaggerate the statement so that it takes a form of a punishable crime, when in fact it was the truth. I could also relate to the 3 days when demons and gates of Hades rejoiced that they have killed the Son of God. But then he was preparing his everlasting glory, taking the keys from the devil that bound us to judgment and fought all principalities of darkness for us. He rose in glory. This reminds me of a very well-known saying that goes, "They tried to bury me. Little did they know that I am a seed." As I left this employment, which was the most dramatic but the most beautiful in many aspects of my life and in my entire career, I knew I had a gap to fill in the business world, where there are wellness services I could be offering, especially to my fellow corporate associates in particular, who deal with stresses and pressure and politics on a daily basis, whether from the side of being the perpetrators or the victims. The perpetuation of pull-down syndrome of women to women, it's happening everywhere in workplaces. Whether you are a recipient or the inflictor of pain, you do need to balance your wellness in the workplace. This is how VAL'SIGNARURE, wellness and event segment of the business, was born in my heart. That is why now we are expanding VAL'SIGNARURES, not only from being just a beauty salon, but to become a registered corporate business with 2 other additional segments of wellness and events management. This is how VAL'SIGNARURE became a registered company that has additional segments of wellness and events management.